Welcome you all to the module 8 of this course, which is titled as Applied Positive Psychology. So, the module 8 is about kindness and prosocial behavior. This is the second lecture of this module and overall it is lecture number 21. So, today's lecture is titled as Altruism and Prosocial Behavior. So, in this lecture we will be focusing on understanding the concept of prosocial behavior, some of the theories and how it is related to well-being. So, before we talk about today's lecture, let me give you a brief recap of the last lecture. So, the last lecture was also part of the same module, which is lecture number 20, and we discussed the concept of kindness, where we discussed what is the meaning of kindness, what kind of behaviors are counted under kindness. We also discussed evolutionary mechanisms of kindness, what are the different evolutionary forces, how it propagates or it facilitates kindness behavior. We also discussed how kindness and happiness are connected to each other, and we also discussed the concept of random acts of kindness, and at the end we discussed the concept of self-kindness or compassion or self-compassion. So, these are some of the things that we discussed in the last lecture, and in today's lecture more specifically we will be focusing on the concept of prosocial behavior or altruistic behavior. So, we will define what is prosocial behavior. We will define what is altruistic behavior. We also discussed why prosocial behavior is so important in the human social context. We will also discuss the relationship between prosocial behavior and well-being. We will also analyze the literature or empirical findings on how prosocial behavior can lead to well-being, and also we will discuss some of the literature on how well-being actually can facilitate prosocial behavior. So, these are some of the things that we will be discussing in today's lecture. Let us start. So, the first important idea is to understand the definition of prosocial behavior or altruistic behavior. Let us see what is the meaning of prosocial behavior or altruistic behavior. Now, there are different kinds of definitions available. Some definition focuses on the intention of the individual who is engaged in the action. So, some definition primarily focuses on the intention. So, if intention is there, then the behavior is counted under prosocial behavior. So, in that context one definition is given here for prosocial behavior. It covers the broad range of actions intended to benefit one or more people other than oneself. So, whenever there is an intention to benefit someone else, that behavior can be broadly called as prosocial behavior. So, here focus is only on intention. So, if your intention is to help someone, benefit someone, support someone, then that behavior, irrespective of the consequences and other thing, the intention will determine that this behavior will be counted under prosocial behavior. Now, altruistic behavior is a very specific aspect of prosocial behavior, where the focus is on from the intentional perspective. It is a voluntary behavior intended to benefit another, which is not performed with the expectation of receiving external reward or avoiding externally produced aversive stimuli or punishment. So, when we talk about altruistic behavior or altruism, the focus is obviously the intention is to help or benefit someone else, but here there is no expectation to get anything in return. So, it is a pure helping nature or intention, where you do not have any expectation of getting anything out of it. So, that is called purely altruistic behavior. So, it is in one category of prosocial behavior. So, these are the definition which focuses on intention of the individual who is engaged in the action. So, if intention will determine whether the action can be called as prosocial or not. Some definition emphasizes consequences of the behavior also. For example, some of the definitions are listed here. One is any action that benefits another. So, if the consequence of your action that it benefits someone else, then based on the consequence we can say it is a prosocial behavior. Another definition is a behavior that is costly to the actor and beneficial to the recipient or recipients. Cost and benefits are defined on the basis of the lifetime direct fitness consequences of a behavior. So, here basically when we talk about prosocial behavior or altruistic behavior based on the consequences, so generally the recipient is benefited for whom the action is performed, and there may be some cost involved to the person who is doing the help. The cost may include some varieties of things, the time, resources of the person, risk, physical risk and so on. So, the person who is engaged in the action, he has some costs are incurred in it, and the recipients generally gets benefit out of it. So, this is a definition that is based on consequences of the action. Some definition emphasize both intention and consequence. This is more kind of broader approach. One definition in this category is it is a voluntary intentional behavior that results in benefits for another person. So, there is an intention also and there is a positive consequence to another person. Some definition also looks at the broader social context in terms of defining prosocial behavior. One such definition is listed here. So, it defines prosocial behavior means no more and no less than behavior that is valued by the individual's society. So, if broader social context values an action, then we can broadly call this is a prosocial behavior. Action which is valued by the social context, then obviously it is a beneficial to the society and the individuals. There are varieties of definition. The basic idea is that any action can be called as a prosocial behavior, provided there is an intention to benefit someone else, one person or multiple persons, and most of the time when the intention is positive, the consequences are also positive. And in overall also such behaviors are valued by the society in general or broader social context. So, all this definition kind of summarizes the different ideas associated with the prosocial behavior. So, this is about the definition of prosocial behavior, or one particular aspect called altruism also we have defined. Now, when we talk about prosocial behavior, in that there are varieties of behaviors are included. More specifically, there are three aspects to it, or three categories of behavior broadly can be grouped under the concept of prosocial behavior. One is called altruism, another is called cooperation, and the third one is called fairness or equity. Each category is defined by their distinct context and motivations, influencing their impact on well-being and outcomes and so on. So, all these three categories comes under the broader umbrella term of prosocial behavior. So, let us see each of them in little bit more detail. So, altruism we have already defined in the definition. It is a particular aspect or particular type of prosocial behavior where there is an intention to benefit another individual without any expectation of return. So, that is a pure prosocial behavior in that sense. Your intention is to just to help someone and you are not expecting anything to get out of it. So, that is a pure prosocial behavior. So, that is called altruism. More technically, this is called as an altruistic behavior. So, altruism involves selfless acts that benefit others without expecting external rewards, often incurring a cost to the individuals. Generally, person who is engaged in the altruistic behavior, he or she incurs certain cost. So, certain costs are required. So, as I already said, that cost may be giving time, resources, maybe sometimes helping someone can risk the person who is helping, risk the life of that person also. So, there may be some varieties of cost involved for the person who is involved in the altruistic action in many contexts. So, that is called altruism. So, this behavior stems from genuine concern for the welfare of others driven by intrinsic motivation. Mostly altruistic behaviors are guided by the intrinsic motivation, with the idea that the person is genuinely concerned with the welfare of another individual, and that motivation is coming from inside without any expectations from reward and external aspects. So, altruism may include things like volunteering when you are not getting anything in return, charitable donations, blood donations, with extraordinary forms of involving significant personal risks such as organ donation to a stranger. So, such thing may be, people may do lot of these things to a stranger also. So, this is a more of an altruistic kind of behavior. There is no apparent benefit to the person. In fact, there is a lot of cost involved to the person. So, altruism is strongly associated with well-being, supported by extensive research. Some of these things will look little bit later. So, people who are altruistic generally they experience the varieties of indicators of well-being. So, their well-being generally enhances, lot of empirical research shows. We will focus on that little bit more. So, this is one aspect of prosocial behavior called altruistic behavior, one category of prosocial behavior. Second category of behavior that comes under prosocial behavior is called cooperation. So, cooperation is mostly discussed in the context of exchange situations on when there are multiple individual involved. So, cooperation refers to prosocial behavior within the exchange context where individuals work together towards a common goal. When there are multiple individuals or at least two individuals working towards a common goal. So, there is an exchange involved between these individuals. So, this behavior often involves short term sacrifices with the expectation of mutual benefit or future reciprocity. So, in this case it is not a pure altruistic kind of behavior where there is a completely selfless behavior. Here it is guided by more of a expectations of some mutual benefit as a group people are doing, or they may expecting something in return in the future. So, examples include sharing responsibilities among friends and teammates. When the people work in a group or in a team, people divide the responsibility so that all the work is not only coming to one person. So, that is called cooperation. You do something, another person does something. So, overall there is a group goal that is achieved when people contribute together for that group goal. So, this is something called as a cooperation. It is also kind of prosocial behavior because there is some intention to benefit each other and whatever it is, or some broader context and so on. The third category of behavior which comes under prosocial behavior, many people generally call it as a fairness. When we are fair to people in any context of behavior, then also we are kind of doing some kind of prosocial behavior. So, it is a behavior which promotes positivity and well-being, and that's as a group goal is also achieved because of some fairness or equity kind of aspects whenever it is there in the behavior. So, fairness reflects adherence to equitable norms, focusing on just outcomes rather than alleviating suffering or anticipating reciprocity. So, in the focus of fairness is to how to equitably distribute things, so that everybody gets according to what they deserve. So, that is what focus is on the outcomes, how that outcomes should be distributed. So, people are fair when this is distributed according to the different what people needs or what people deserves. So, that becomes an equitable kind of fairness in a situations where there has to be distribution of resources and so on. So, acts of fairness such as equal or equitable division of resources, emphasizing impartiality and justice over personal gains. So, generally whenever people are fair, that means they are not biased towards something, people are impartial and there is a justice prevailing, focus is on justice is given to everybody, not just someone's personal gain. Then in that situation fairness is prevailed. That is a kind of prosocial behavior, a category of prosocial behavior. So, each of this type of behavior, whatever we have discussed, the three categories, altruism, that kind of behavior what we discussed, altruism, cooperation and fairness, all these three kinds of behaviors are driven by the distinct even in the biological or neural and cognitive mechanisms. While cooperation and fairness may influence well-being, that can also be connected to well-being, but relationship between altruism and well-being is particularly robust. This altruism aspect of behavior is very strongly connected to well-being. This is what empirical research shows. Other aspects are also related to well-being, but altruism is more specifically it has more robust relationship with the well-being. This is what a lot of empirical research indicates. Now, the important question comes that why a lot of these prosocial behaviors are connected to well-being, why it is so important, why does it matter in the social context or human life, why it matters, why it is so important, why it is given collectively or as a social context or as a community context, prosocial behaviors given lot of importance, what is the main reasons behind it. So, let us look into some of the possible reasons behind it. One is about human identity. Now, when we talk about kindness or prosocial behavior or helping other individuals, it is kind of unconsciously it became a part of human identity collectively. This is what collective teaching talks about, that it should be a part of human identity, that human beings should be kind and helpful. Whether one becomes or not, that's a different thing, but collectively if you look at what social norms talks about, is that it should be an important part of each individual's identity. This is because this is a desirable thing and everybody rewards such kind of actions or attitudes. So, human identity, when we talk about, the kindness and helpfulness behavior are very intrinsic to how we perceive humanity and our best selves. So, this is something idealized in a collective context. Kindness, helpfulness should be there within all individuals. This is what is expected from everybody. So, it is an idealized concept, and that is a part of human perception. So, it is a part of human identity. So, most people aspire to be generous, altruistic, reflecting the values of caring for and assisting others even at a personal cost. So, it becomes unconsciously a part of collective identity that we desire that our identity should be associated with kindness and helpfulness, so, the people sometimes get motivated to engage in such behavior because of this identity that we consciously or unconsciously create around us, and it is kind of rewarded by the collective social norms. So, this is one important thing. People are propelled for such behavior. One of the reason or why it is so important, because it is a part of our identity itself. When this identity is fulfilled, we feel good about ourselves, we feel happy. So, this is one important thing. Second is there are a lot of psychological benefits. Some of this thing we have just slightly touched upon it, that people, when people engage in pro-social behavior, it gives them a lot of psychological benefits. They get immediate lot of benefits in terms of well-being concepts and so on. So, engaging pro-social acts, a lot of research shows, enhances meaning in life, purpose in life, happiness, it increases happiness and life satisfaction. Conversely, unkind action often leads to guilt, shame, emotion that motivate behavior to change towards prosociality. So, a lot of research shows prosocial behavior enhances both hedonic and eudaimonic aspects of well-being, which includes happiness, life satisfaction, meaning and purpose in life and so on. On the other hand, when people engage in unkind behavior, many people, if they have normal developmental processes, they may feel a lot of guilt and shame and so on, which is an opposite aspects of well-being and so on. So, many times because of this guilt, people also engaged in prosocial behavior to remove that guilt. So, there are a lot of psychological benefits for prosocial behavior. That is why people engage in prosocial behavior, or why it matters, because it gives so many benefits also. So, this is another reason. The third reason is about perception, social perception and relationship. Prosocial behavior is an integral aspect of social relationship. It facilitates relationships. It is a foundation for social connections and perceptions and so on. So, being prosocial improves social capital, the so called social capital that we have in terms of relationships and other things. For example, prosocial behavior may increase popularity of the person. So, prosocial children are often rated as more popular by their peers. So, if people engage in prosocial behavior, people judge them more positively. So, in that sense we are saying they are more popular. It also increases attractiveness of the individual. Altruistic individuals are considered more attractive and valued in long term relationships and so on. So, people basically find them more desirable, because this is something a desirable quality. When people show it, it is valued by people around them and the broader society also. So, this is also another reason many people engage in prosocial behavior, or it is important because it enhances positive social perceptions and it contributes positively to relationships. Another important reason why it is important to be for prosocial behavior, or people engage in prosocial behavior, because one of the important is that it is the foundation of human society. We cannot expect an human society without the concept of kindness and prosocial behavior. Society will disintegrate. Or if you are seeing that society is disintegrating in lot of situations, or lot of societies are disintegrating, one of the reason is that this kindness and prosocial behavior are decreasing in those societies, which can manifest in the form of various conflicts, doubts, lack of trust in relationship between groups, between individuals and so on. All these are in reflection of lack of kindness and prosocial behavior. So, functioning of society, it is very important that people at large at least most of the people or a large chunk of the people are showing kindness and prosocial behavior, then a society can exist, otherwise it will disintegrate. So, this prosocial behavior underpins social structures, enabling charitable acts, supporting educations, standing against injustice like bullying. Without it, social cohesion would erode, and acts of collective good such as voting for policies that benefits other would diminish. So, it is an important aspect of social cohesion. So, people are connected to each other positively in a society. One of the reason is this sense of kindness and prosocial behavior. So, these are some of the reasons why prosocial behavior is significant or it is relevant and why people should engage in it. So, these are like very important reasons why people get engaged into it and why should people engage in it. So, these are some of the major reasons behind it. Now, let us look into the relationship between prosocial behavior and well-being. Now, a lot of research shows that prosocial behavior actually enhances the various indicators of well-being. So, let us see this relationship. Lot of empirical literature or studies have shown, including systematic reviews, meta-analysis, have demonstrated that beneficial effects of prosocial behavior such as prosocially spending money on others, making others happy, acts of kindness on well-being. All these kinds of behavior which can be broadly included under prosocial behavior has a lot of positive impact on well-being, and this has been demonstrated by various varieties of research, including systematic reviews, meta-analysis and so on. Now, a lot of previous research also indicated that prosocial behavior even exert beneficial effects on the person well-being, even when the recipient is anonymous and unknown. So, even if when people are strangers, when people help strangers, that also has a lot of beneficial impact in terms of well-being on the person who is or the person who is engaged in that action. While many studies suggest that prosocial action enhance well-being, others indicate that well-being and happiness can actually motivate prosocial behavior. So, this relationship between prosocial behavior and well-being can be bidirectional. So, prosocial behavior can enhance positive well-being. On the other hand, it is also possible that when people experience higher well-being or happiness, they are more likely to help other people or prosocial behavior may increase. So, it is possible that the relationship between prosocial behavior and well-being can be bidirectional, and we will look into the evidences of that. So, emerging evidence generally points that that a positive feedback loop where prosocial behavior and well-being mutually reinforce each other. So, it is possible that each of these two constructs, prosocial behavior, well-being, mutually influence each other. Prosocial behavior enhances well-being, well-being then further enhances prosocial behavior and so on. So, it is possible. Let us look into the literature of both the sides. So, we will see the theoretical link between prosocial behavior leading to well-being and also how well-being can lead to prosocial behavior. So, let us look into each of them one by one. So, let us look into some of the theoretical concepts which can explain why prosocial behavior lead to well-being. Empirical evidences already showed that there is a positive relationship between prosocial behavior and well-being. Now, let us see some of the possible theories that can explain this relationship. Why prosocial behavior increases well-being or indicators of well-being. So, two theories will be discussed in this context. One is called warm glow theory, another is negative state relief model. So, this let us look into how these two theories contributes to our understanding of how prosocial behavior leads to well-being. Now, warm glow theory, it was proposed by James Andrioni in 1990, which provides an psychological explanation for why individuals engage in the prosocial behavior like charitable giving or helping others. Why people engage in such behavior and why it leads to positive impact. So, this theory talks about that there is an intrinsic emotional reward for prosocial behavior. So, this theory says that individuals experience a warm glow or a feeling of satisfaction and happiness from performing prosocial acts. So, whenever people engage in prosocial act, generally they feel a sense of satisfaction, there is a sense of happiness out of it. So, that is they called as a warm glow experience when people engage in prosocial behavior. Now, this warm glow is the reason why people engage in prosocial behavior and why it leads to positive benefits. This positive emotional response is independent of the tangible or social impact of the act. So, whatever the impact of that act, it may be independent of that. Simple act of kindness or act of prosocial behavior itself leads to this warm glow experience, and which may be independent of whatever the consequence this action has. For example, a person may feel good about donating to charity even if they do not know how their donation will be used. So, they may not be actually knowing whether their donation is rightly used or what kind of impact this has. If the person just donate for the sake of or the intention of benefit somebody, that itself gives them this warm glow experience, even if they may not know actually how this is used. So, because of this intrinsic emotional reward, people engage in prosocial behavior and leads to many well-being, it enhances well-being. Now, here when we talk about warm glow theory, they talk about now there is no pure altruistic motive for any kind of prosocial behavior. So, warm glow theory contradicts with the idea of pure altruism, where we said that people do prosocial behavior purely without any expectation of reward, which they are contradicting here by saying that individuals are motivated by a mix of altruistic and self-serving desires. The warm glow effect is part of the self-serving reward as it provides emotional gratification to the giver. So, even though the person may not be expecting anything in return in terms of tangible or external reward, but this internal emotional reward that they get is they are what desiring. So, it is in that sense we cannot call it as a pure altruistic behavior, because there is still some desire to get happiness out of it. So, in a broader philosophical sense we can say we can never say any prosocial behavior as purely altruistic. Another concept that comes here is the reinforcement mechanism. So, this positive feeling generated by prosocial act can create a feedback loop, encouraging individual to repeat those behavior in the future. Since the prosocial behavior provides them a warm glow and positive emotional experience, this positive emotional experience itself becomes a reward for future actions again. So, people are motivated by do them because it again they want that kind of positive emotional state. Over time, people may develop a habitual tendency to help others because of the consistent emotional reward. So, the main reason why people engage in is that the emotional reward they get, which leads to various positive outcomes. So, how it is linked to well-being? In that sense, emotional boost from the warm glow effect enhances subjective well-being by fostering positive emotions, increasing life satisfactions. So, this warm glow experience enhances a lot of these positive emotional experiences, life satisfactions, which are indicators of well-being only. So, this is one theory that can explain why people engage in the prosocial behavior and why it is linked to well-being. Second theory that can also explain why prosocial behavior is linked to well-being is called as a negative state relief model. Now, this negative state relief model, it was proposed by Cialdini and colleagues in 1981 as a psychological framework to explain why people engage in prosocial behavior. Just like the warm glow theory, the focus was on to understand why people engage in prosocial behavior. Now, according to this model, helping others is primarily motivated by the desire to alleviate one's own negative emotional state, such as guilt, sadness and distress. Here they are just focusing on another aspect of emotion. In the warm glow theory, the focus was on that when people help, they experience positive emotional states, which becomes a rewarding experience. Here they are saying that people are more likely to engage in prosocial behavior when they are motivated by the desire to remove their negative emotional state. So, whenever they experience guilt, sadness, distress, they are more likely to help other individual, because they may feel that by helping others these emotions will be removed or replaced by more positive emotions. So, to remove these negative states or emotions, people may engage in prosocial behavior. So, it is almost talking about the same concept of the warm glow theory, but in a different sense. So, more specifically, this theory predicts that at least under certain circumstances, may not be in all circumstances, but in some circumstances a temporary feeling of sadness is likely to result in increased willingness to help others. Not necessarily all the time when people feel sad they will be more helping in nature, but at least in some circumstances when people experience negative emotions such as sadness and so on, this may result in more willingness to help others in individual. Now, the question is, why would sad mood lead to increased willingness to help others? It intuitionally doesn't, intuitively people generally doesn't make much sense. Why should be the reason behind it? So, according to this theory, this is for more of a selfish reason. Specifically, people have been socialized in such a way that they are rewarded for helping other people. Over time, people internalize this and find helping others is more rewarding, especially the emotionally rewarding. When a person is sad, he or she is motivated to repair that mood and anticipate that helping will improve their mood. So, at least they have this kind of expectation, probably that will enhance their prosocial behavior. More simply, when people are sad, they may be more likely to help others because they believe that doing will make them feel better. What is the main selfish reason behind this? Is that people want to feel good, and this sad mood may promote prosocial behavior, especially when they expect that helping others will improve their mood and so on. So, this model suggests that witnessing someone in need or suffering can evoke negative emotions. Many times when we feel someone is in suffering or in negative state, it increases, it kind of mirrors that negative emotions to the person whoever is observing. So, person may feel discomfort, guilt, empathy induced distress when they observe someone else in distress. Prosocial actions such as helping or donating serve as a way to reduce this negative feeling and restore emotional balance. So, because when they observe other people in suffering, it may induce negative emotions. So, people may engage in prosocial behavior to reduce them or remove them, whatever guilt and discomfort and distress they experience. So, individual evaluates whether helping will effectively reduce their negative state. If they perceive emotional relief outweighs the cost of helping, they are more likely to engage in prosocial behavior. So, this model says not everybody under negative emotion will engage in prosocial behavior. People generally evaluate the cost involved in it. So, if they feel that cost is less than the reward, then probably they will get engaged in prosocial behavior. If they think the cost is too much and it may not reduce their negative emotion, they may not engage in prosocial behavior. So, once the individual acts to help, they experience a reduction in negative emotions, leading to sense of relief and emotional well-being. So, that enhances emotional well-being, and that may be the main motivation behind prosocial actions. So, this is some of the explanation why prosocial behavior can increase well-being. Now, let us look into the other aspect of the same relationship, that sometimes when we experience well-being or indicators of well-being, that may actually motivate prosocial behavior. So, let us look into the other side of the story, that how well-being actually can lead to prosocial behavior. Now, a lot of empirical studies shows that there is a positive relationship between well-being and prosocial behavior, that not just correlation, but in terms of when people are in a positive emotional state, it enhances their tendency to help other individuals. So, some of the experimental evidence also shows induced positive emotions, increased willingness to help both in laboratory and real world settings. Life satisfaction predicted charitable giving more strongly than reverse. So, people who are more satisfied with their life, they are more likely to engage in charitable actions and so on. Even in some longitudinal studies shows that higher well-being in individual was associated with greater engagement in altruistic behavior. Longitudinal panel data also showed that greater well-being leads to increase volunteer hours over a year and so on. So, these are some of the experimental and longitudinal studies shows that actually when people experience more indicators of well-being like happiness and satisfaction, it may actually promote their prosocial behavior. Now, let us look into the explanation of this, why this may be the case. Let us look into again some theories behind it. So, we will talk about two main theories. One is mood maintenance theory, second is broaden and build theory, which we have already discussed in some of the earlier model in detail, but here we will be focusing more on the prosocial context. This theory, the details are already covered, but here focus will be more on understanding or using this theory to understand prosocial behavior. So, this theories generally suggest that positive emotions encourage helping behaviors by either prolonging a good mood or fostering personal resources. So, let us look into these theories. Mood maintenance theory. Now, according to this theory of mood maintenance theory or hypothesis, individual experiencing positive emotions are likely to engage in helping behaviors. Here in the negative state relief model, it shows that people who are in the negative emotional state are also in many times motivated to engage in prosocial behavior to remove that negative emotional state. Here it is saying that individual experiencing even positive emotion also can engage in prosocial behavior. In the earlier case, the motivation was to remove the negative state. In this case, the motivation is to maintain that positive emotion state. So, the motivation is very same in both the negative state relief model and mood maintenance theory. So, this acts provides them with the condition reinforcement, thereby sustaining their positive mood or preventing the negative feeling they might experience if they choose not to help. So, just to prolong or maintain their positive mood, when people are in the positive emotional state, to maintain their positive emotional state, many times people may engage in prosocial behavior, or so that their mood does not go into the negative category. Now, consider someone feeling down or depressed, seeking to improve their emotional state, which the negative state relief model talks about, which we have discussed, suggests that individuals in negative moods are also motivated to assist others. By helping, they can generate conditional reinforcement to remove their emotional state. So, these two theories are basically two sides of the same coin. One is saying when you are in the positive mood, you are also many times may lead to engage in prosocial behavior. The reason is people want to maintain that positive mood, helping also increases and maintains their positive mood. On the other hand, many times negative mood also may lead to engage in prosocial behavior. The motivation behind is that to change the negative emotional state to positive emotional state. So, this can kind of also explain that when people are in positive emotional state, it may lead to prosocial behavior. So, higher positive emotions and well-being can lead to prosocial behavior, particularly this model talks about positive emotions. Now, there are some experimental evidences, some of the earlier study, initial study that was done for these theories also gave some experimental evidence in this direction. For example, studies have shown that happy individuals are more likely to engage in prosocial actions such as offering assistance or donating resources. Happiness based helping appears consistent even when individuals believe their mood is fixed and cannot change. So, this some of this earlier research actually shows that even if they feel that even if they do not help, their mood is not going to change, still they are more likely to help when they are in a positive emotional state. Studies demonstrate that sadness increases helping behavior only when individuals perceive that helping can improve their emotional state. On the other hand, people who are in the negative emotions or sad or sad emotional state, they help only when they believe that helping will improve their mood. They may not help in every negative emotional state. In this case, helping decreases when emotional state is perceived as fixed. So, when positive emotional under positive emotional state, when the people engage in prosocial behavior, even if they perceive it is a fixed, that it will not change. But when in the negative emotional state, when people believe their negative emotion is fixed and it is not going to change, and in such cases the helping tendency may decrease. When they feel even if I help, it is not going to change my mood, then negative emotions may not motivate people to engage in prosocial behavior. But on the other hand, when people are in a positive emotional state, when they even perceive their emotions are fixed, despite that perception, people are more likely to engage in prosocial behavior. So, there is a difference between this when people experience negative emotions and when they experience positive emotions, the tendencies may differ. Another theory that can also explain why positive emotion leads to helping behavior is called broaden and build theory of positive emotions. The details of this theory we have already covered. Now, here focus will be on how this can explain helping behavior. Now, this theory says positive emotions broadens our thought processes and actions. So, it broadens perspectives. How this will lead to helping behavior? So, positive emotions like joy, gratitude, love broaden attentions and thinking, enabling individual to consider a wider range of possibilities. So, people become broader in their perspective, they can think about broader things and the much more aspects of the situation. So, the range of possibilities increases when people experience positive emotions. This explains perspective increases empathy. When you are able to understand and look at different or higher range of things, this may increase your empathy. You may able to understand the perspective of other people when you are open. When people are closed and rigid, they do not understand others' perspective. So, positive emotion also help people to understand perspective of other people, and it makes them open to others' need, which are all critical for helping behaviors. So, when you understand others' perspective, your empathy increases. When you are open to the needs of other people, you are more likely to help individuals as compared to when you are very rigid and so on. So, a joyful person, for example, might notice subtle cues indicating someone needs help, leading to acts of kindness which they otherwise might overlook and so on. So, this is one important aspect of this theory. Second important aspect of this theory is that positive emotion builds resources and which may ultimately leads to more helping behavior. So, engaging prosocial behavior under positive emotional state helps individuals build enduring resources. So, positive emotion builds social resources, strengthen relationship and social bonds through acts of kindness. So, even positive emotions enhances social resources, like it enhances bonding with other people more, which then again more likely to enhance prosocial behavior and so on. Psychological resources enhance self-efficacy, resilience, sense of purpose from helping others and so on. So, helping behavior can and positive emotion both can increase psychological resources. It can also increase cognitive resources, improve problem solving skills, creativity from the broadened mindset and so on. So, for example, helping a colleague under a positive mood not only resolves the immediate issues, but also strengthen workplace relationships, fostering mutual support in the future and so on. So, positive emotion build resources which can ultimately also these resources can be helpful in terms of helping other individuals, or helping individuals can also promote lot of these things that are mutually positively influenced by both positive emotions and helping behaviors. So, what is the mechanism here? When people under positive emotion, their thought action becomes broadens. This positive emotion encourages exploratory and inclusive thinking, making individuals more likely to engage in helping behavior. When people broaden their perspective, they are more likely to understand other people and help other people. It also increases perceptions of other needs. Broadened attention help individuals become more attuned to others' emotional and physical states. So, therefore, they are more likely to help. So, overall empathy will increase. Positive emotion enhances social connection, which is very important requirement for prosocial behavior also. So, positive emotions motivate individuals to strengthen social bonds through act of kindness, promoting reciprocal helping in the future and so on. So, these are some of the possible mechanisms by which we can explain why sometimes well-being, higher well-being can actually promote helping behavior. So, there are experimental evidences, longitudinal evidences, and there are theories which can explain that. So, this relationship between well-being and prosocial behavior can be bidirectional. Well-being can promote prosocial behavior, on the other hand prosocial behavior can promote well-being, and we have discussed both the theoretical explanation behind it and the empirical evidences around it. So, with this I stop here. We will be talking about few more aspects of prosocial behavior, particularly from the interventional perspective in the next lecture. Thank you.